Okay, pretty sure that I am live now, and I don't want to take too much time tonight, just rattling off a bunch of stuff. So here's the deal. If you want to follow along, let me just go ahead and jump over to the computer. If you want to follow along tonight, what I'm going to ask you to do is go over to freewillphotos.com. You'll see the link in the description to my website. And when you get there, it's going to give you an opportunity to join one of the free, or not one of the free community. And when you get there, you'll come over to downloads. And on the downloads page, I think I need to scoot over a little bit. There we go. On the downloads page, you'll see the file for the landscape that we're going to be working on today. So that's only if you want to follow along. Again, you can download this or you can use your own image if you so choose. 100% up to you. All right. And then we'll go ahead and minimize that. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. If you have comments today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer all of the comments at the end of the live stream. So please drop them in there. And if you're watching this in the post stream, if you will, or as a posted video, then go ahead and drop your comments down below. So what we're going to do today is actually pretty straightforward. All right. And that's just transforming this image. Now, I realize you may not have seen the final image, and because of the way that my computer works sometimes, ON1 did not allow me to save the final edits, which is great because we're just going to recreate this. But here is kind of the before and after, and I'm sure you've seen this in the thumbnail. The transformation we're going to make is all inside of ON1 Photo Raw. We're not using any plugins. We will be using SkySwap AI, but yeah. So let me go ahead and close this down and let's get started. So the first thing that I like to do is just get my base exposure with any image. The way that I process the base exposure here is I hit AI Auto. All right. And what this is going to do is really just open up the image, and I'll even change or mess around with my camera profiles. I think on that one, I actually went with the standard option, but today or tonight, whatever, I'm going to go with, let's go with landscape. I think I like what landscape is doing. It's giving us that contrasty look, and that's kind of what I want to see. So with that being said, AI Auto is a little too strong, and I'm only looking really in this area because we're going to selectively edit this area and then completely change the sky. So I'm not overly concerned with with anything beyond this foreground area. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I want this to be a little bit more bright in the shadows. So I'm going to pull up on my shadow slider, and this is going to disable AI Auto, but that's fine because I now have this area that, or I have it in a place where I feel comfortable. And I think I'm going to contrast it just a little bit more and maybe pull down on my blacks. And that's going to lead me to open up my shadows just a little bit more. So now that I have my base exposure, turn that off, turn it back on, this looks pretty good to me. And now it is time to do step number 2, which was changing the sky. So I'm going to click on sky and let ON1 do its AI calculations. This photo actually works pretty well with the sky swap feature. So I was actually very pleased with the way that SkySwap worked out on here. It doesn't work that way with every image. So, if you're running into those issues, then maybe something worth testing the waters or manually masking. Now, I used a preset. I think it was underneath sunset. In fact, I think it was this exact one, which is great because it just makes this process that much easier. Now, if you look around the edges here, see if I can pull that up, you can see that there's like this glow. So what I need to do is scale this up, or at least that's how I fix this. And in order to scale it, if you look over here on the right hand side, you can just pull up on the scale and you see that go away. I'm going to scale this up quite a bit, or not quite a bit, just a little bit more. And then what I want to do is I want to shift my horizon line a little bit lower because there's a glow that's happening right there. And I don't necessarily care for that glow. And to do the shifting of the horizon, you just pull this little slider here. And I'm going to go something like that. I think that'll be good. Okay. And I'm just checking my mask. I think that'll be all right. I can work with that. There's some remnants of the clouds in the original image that are still showing through. And in order to fix that, I could, make this, I guess, the fade edge. I can fade that a little bit less harsh, like to about there. And that gets rid of that. When I didn't have the fade edge pulled down, I was able to see some of those clouds. And that's going to be different for every photo. So don't worry about it if it doesn't happen in your photo. So we're going to leave it like so. And now what we need to do is match the intensity of the sky to the brightness value that I have down here at the bottom of my image. In order for me to do that, I'm going to come over to brightness and I'm just going to pull up on the brightness slider until this gets to a point that looks good to the eye. All right. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to look decent enough to the eye. And I think that looks pretty good with the brightness value. And don't worry, we're going to really mesh all this stuff together here in a little bit. The next thing that I'm going to do, and I think I'm going to leave the lighting. The next thing that I'm going to do is I need to figure out how I'm going to contrast this with the background, all right? And I'm debating on if I want to use the lighting here or do something else. So I think I am just going to use the lighting here. And now I need to darken this down just a little bit to help it blend in a little better with the foreground here. So what I'm going to do is click on the mask, hit copy, let ON1 do its thing. It's going to copy that mask for me. And then we're going to jump over to the effects module. And I'm going to add a tone enhancer. Now, fun fact, if you want to modify the sky, you have to do it in the effects after you use Sky Swap AI. Now, I don't know why that is. I just know that if I wanted to modify the sky, I have to do it over here in effects. If I go to local adjustment, it's not going to actually work. So I'm going to paste that in there, and then I can just pull this down. I can contrast it a little bit more and even pull down the blacks in there. And this is just going to help me really richen up that sky. Now, if I wanted to get better control over the sky in general, I can also come up here and add a color enhancer, but I'm not going to do that right now because I just wanted to darken that a bit. And I'm going to put a vignette on this piece, so don't worry about this being bright right now. I just wanted to make sure that I matched the sky close enough to the foreground here. Okay, so far we went from this to this, and that's actually pretty good. I'm not complaining. Now we need to do something about this foreground to match the colors overall. And this is where I went to the local adjustments. We'll let that load up. Okay. And I use the paint with color, and I change this over to classic. And then what I'm going to do is grab a sample from the sky. We'll grab maybe this color right here. Don't know what color that is, but it's okay. And I'm just going to paint this over the foreground area here. And I know that this looks pretty bad right now, but this is how we start to match those colors. All right. Make the sky look like it looks down here. And then it's also going to blend in with that. So what I need to do is change my blending mode. And I think I went with color on the last one. No, I didn't, because that wouldn't have made sense. I think I actually went with lighten. Okay. And now what I do is just blend or bring this down. Bring down the opacity. That's what I'm doing. And then I'll probably even pull this out of the shadow area, so that way it's only really impacting the brightest areas. All right, so if I turn this off and on, you'll see that it's just adding like this color overlay to this area and helping to connect the overall image. And this is really going to go far later on down the line. So I'm going to call this pink overlay. And now we're going to add another adjustment. And this time I'm going to paint with color again, but I'm going to grab a orange color. We'll grab this one right here. Let ON1 finish its thoughts. Hey, Mark, good to see you too. Thanks for stopping in. So now I'm going to go back to classic. And the reason I use classic is because it opens up the options for me to really manipulate the blending if I need to. And what I'm going to do is paint right over this road. And I probably should have done that with a little bit of a smaller brush, but it's okay. I'm gonna just run with it. All right. And we're going to call this one orange. Okay. And click the gear icon. And we're going to come right back down to lighten, I think it was. Or maybe this one we can get away with color. We might be able to get away with color, but I don't really like that. So we'll leave it on normal. And again, this is one of those areas where I'm going to pull this out of the highlights, the brightest areas, because I don't need it there. And maybe even pull it out of what we would call the skin tones. I'm going to paint this away from that area. So that way it's just mostly the road. All right. The goal here is just to draw in or to make it look like, you know, there's this this sunset happening. All right. And then with this mask, I'm going to increase my feather. So that way it just spreads even more like that. And yeah, I think that'll work. And then I'll pull down the exposure and pull up on my saturation, or my vibrance, I should say. Okay, and maybe there. All right. Modifications are going to be different for your photos, I already know, but I am just experimenting for the recreation of the last image that I made. So now we have the yellow brick road and we also have the sky. So now it is time to really marry these two concepts together. And that happens with a photo filter. All right. And the photo filter, what it's going to do, you could do this with a LUT, but I personally like the photo filter because it gives me the most control. If I click on the color, I can grab my eyedropper here, and I want to go with one of these more pink tone colors. And just look at how that really marries the entire image together. So if I turn this off, it kind of looks like two separate images. They don't really play nice together. But if I turn this on, then it really does bring everything together. And that's what we're going for. All right, we want this to look cohesive. So I'm just going to pull up the amount here. And now that the overall image has this cohesive color, it's overall too dark. All right. And there is some back and forth with this. I do acknowledge that. And if anyone has some more, a better method, then please share it. But now I'm just going to pull up on the exposure and open up the shadows, contrast the image, and maybe pull down on my blacks so that way it really goes the way that I want it to go. Now, the next piece that I need to do is really just start to make this manipulation concept of drawing in that sunset approach or look. And the way that I did that, or that I would recommend you do it, is you want to create another, sorry, getting ahead of myself. So we're going to go back to local adjustments. And now what we're going to do is add like a sun glow right over the top of the mountains. In the last one, let me pull that back up. In the last one, you can see there's this glow over the mountains. And we just want to make this, a little believable. All right. So I'm going to put that glow back over the mountains. The way that I did that is I hit Add Adjustment. And you remember how I said if you use the local adjustment tab, anything you do isn't going to impact the sky because of the way that the masking priority works. Then you'll see that here in action shortly. So I'm just going to grab one of these yellow colors, and it's okay. I can change it afterwards. And once the color is selected, I'm going to hit the letter M, and just because I forgot the keyboard shortcut for the line masking tool. And I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to click here, click all the way over here, and I'm going to actually have to fix that because I want this light to kind of go in the same direction of the light in the sky. And then I'm just going to click there to close that. So I really need that to go there. And I'll pull this down and put this over here. And I want to paint my effect in over the mountains in this particular area. So if I click paint, you can see that it's only adding that effect over the mountains. And that's the reason why I recommend using the line mask tool. And of course, I can click on this and I can modify the feather however I want, but I want it to be very loose. All right. And then what I'm going to do is hit done. And I will come over to my mask. Or I'm sorry, I need to go to my blend options and I need to turn this to lighten. And why are you not lightening? Let me go to classic. Okay. I guess I have to be on classic for the lighten blend mode to work. Don't know why I did that. And now what I need to do is get my line mask tool back and put that over the edge there. And now hit done. Okay. Bear with me. This is all going to make sense here in a second. So now what I can do, and the reason why I like being on classic, using my mouse wheel and it's messing it all up, is because I can increase my exposure, and you see how that starts to get a little bit brighter. So I'm on the lighten blend mode, and because I have the classic setting applied, I can increase my exposure, and what that does is really allows me to get a more realistic approach. So that's why I was asking you to bear with me, because it does make sense. Now you can go as far or as not far as you want. And I am going to go to about here. And then I'm just going to pull up on the vibrancy and see if that helps with anything. All right. And then what I'm going to do is pull this out of the highlights a little bit, because I really only want to impact that shadow area that's on the mountains, which I don't think there's much of a highlight on those mountains to begin with. And now all I need to do is really just paint this in the way that I want. So if I grab the brush tool and with my feather at 100%, what I would recommend you do, and this is 100% up to you, you could pull down the opacity. I'll probably say somewhere in the 40s. I'll just go with 40. And you just start to paint this away. All right. And do it in individual passes. And I'll pull this over on here. And this is just going to help with adding in that that light look in the areas that you need it, and also removing it from the areas that you don't need it. But because you also have the brush, you're able to really hone in. And let's say I wanted to paint some light right over here. Now that's a little too hard, so I'm gonna hit Command Z and just bring my opacity down to about 20 and make a smaller brush and just paint right over this edge. And this is how you really start to sell this look. All right. Compositing is all about taking your time to make the light make sense to the overall image. And we're not done yet. We're just really getting started with the modification of light. And that didn't really paint in on that area. There we go. So now I have my light looking, the way that I want to. If I turn it off and turn it back on, you can see where it's hitting. And maybe, I'm like, all right, that looks a little too strong. What you can do is just pull down on your opacity. And this is going to let that original image kind of blend through. So if I turn this off and on now, you can see how the light is just, kissing the top of this particular mountain. Now, what I need to do is go back to my sky and copy the mask that I made with the sky. And the reason for that is I'm going to come back over here to local adjustment, and I'm going to add another adjustment. And you have to bear with me because it took me a second to remember how I did this. So I think it was, I added the mask, I inverted the mask, and then we'll get rid of this exposure. And then I think I came over here and added a line mask to this. And we'll say something like that. And then I added into here. Okay, yeah, I think that is working. I think that's doing what I needed to do. And then we'll close this out. And we'll hit paint with color. No, it's not doing it here. Okay. How did you do that, Chris? So the part that I'm trying to do now is add in the sun rays to the background of the image here. And I know I can do it by adding an additional layer. I'm just hesitant to doing that because I did say that you could do all of this on one, and I did figure it out, but I thought I would have that mask saved so that way I would just be able to copy that and kind of talk you through it, because it did take a little bit of time for me to figure that piece out. So we're going to do this the good old-fashioned way. All right, we're going to come over here to Effects, and we're going to click Add Filter. I remember how I did it now. And we're going to add a sun flare. I'm going to grab my transform, and I'm going to move the center of the sun flare to about right there. And I changed the flare to one of these other ones. Would have been helpful to know which one I actually used. I'll just go ahead and use this one. Okay. And then I'm going to, I think I pasted the mask. So that kept it back there. But then there was a way that I was able to get the mask or get the sun flare to kind of glow that way. And that technique is escaping me right now. So I apologize for that. But the goal here is I want to get a sun behind the mountain, and I want to do it all on one layer because I know that I could just cut this out and then put that back there and then paste this back on top, and that would work in the layer version of this, but that's not what I want to do because I don't believe that to be the best method. So let me reset this, and you know what? Okay. This is not how I would do it, but I'm going to click on the mask, hit mask, and mask sky. Okay. And what I'm going to allow this to do is only show the sun flare over here and then just mask it out manually or mask it back in manually using the line mask tool. And that will be a way of making this effect work. So just bear with me as ON1 finishes thinking through that. And while on one's thinking, I see Mark had or not a question, a comment about the photo filter, not knowing what it was for. Yeah, you could do a lot of stuff with the photo filter. You can. I have a video showing some of the things that you can do with the photo filter, but think about what you used to be able to put on the front of your camera. And let me just cancel that because this is as exciting as watching paint dry. You you would put a filter on the front of your camera, and when you did that, it would bake in the effect to the image of whatever that filter did. So if it was a polarizer or a mist filter, things of that sort. The reason that the photo filter is there, or at least I believe, is so you can do those types of effects. Now, I use it for a color grading tool mostly because that's just me and my style, but I'm sure you could do many things with it. So what I've done is I've pasted the sky mask, or the mask of the sky from Sky Swap AI, onto my sun flare. I'm going to invert this. And this is how I got the look on the front end. It's all kind of coming back to me now. And then I just pulled down on the opacity because we didn't need this to be so much like a really strong glow. And you can see that it's just adding that subtle glow look to the overall image. And then what I'm going to do is, with the mask selected, I'm going to use my line mask tool, and this is where I added in the effect again. Kind of did like a triangular light leak effect, and I made it come all the way over there. And I'm just going to pull this out. And then I want to paint in right there. And I think I had a different lens flare, or sun flare, and it brought some extra light out here to the side. But for the purposes of today's tutorial, because if I hit the letter O, you can see that I'm just bringing some light out here, or I'm adding in that sun flare to kind of come out over here, but it's not affecting anywhere else in the overall mask. And of course, what I can do, I think I actually increased the saturation of the sun flare and the brightness, so that way it would really stand out. But again, you gotta forgive me for not remembering exactly how I did that. I was hoping that it would save, but it didn't. So that is what it is. All right. Now we have the image composite going from this, which, it was a very flat and uninspiring image, to this right here, which is a little bit more inspiring and I think overall more dramatic. Now, the last thing that I would do to really tie this off is just give it a dynamic contrast. And this is going to help with the pop in the foreground, but I don't want that on my sky. So I'm going to come over here and hit paste and invert this, so that way it's only on the foreground. and I'm not going to need that much dynamic contrast. So I'm just going to pull down on the opacity. I normally leave this at the initial or the base settings whenever I use dynamic contrast. Sometimes I crank it to surreal. It just depends on the image, but I think that that's going to work pretty good right there. And then I may need to add in a tone enhancer down to and just contrast the whole image, and then maybe pull down. No, I think that'll be all right. Maybe what I'll do, instead of the tone enhancer, let me just turn that off for a second. I'm going to add in a color enhancer. And what this is going to allow me to do is to grab that greenery down there, and maybe we'll try and darken that up just a touch and saturate it a little bit more, and pull down on the greens, push those more towards the yellow, and then saturate it as well. See if that's doing anything. It's not really touching those. So I don't think that that's going to be as beneficial as I was hoping it would be. But what we can do is add a color enhancer back to the image, paste in our mask, invert it, and then increase the vibrancy down here at the bottom, as well as the saturation, and just start to tone the temperature with the sky. I think the sky is just a little bit more blue. Maybe throw some magenta. And this is, again, just trying to get those colors to match overall. And then I'll do one last color enhancer, and hopefully this will get the sky working the way that I want it to work, because I think that there's a lot of good information in the sky. We're just missing it. So this time I'll paste that mask of the sky back over it, and we'll increase the saturation. Yeah, that's getting the sky to really pop a little bit more. And maybe vibrance it a little bit. Cool it off just a touch. And maybe even pull down that adjustment. So this is the before, and this is the final image. I think that, or at least this is what I would consider to be the final image. I could do a whole lot more to this particular edit if you know, I wanted to just keep diving in. There's so much that I could do. I could add a glow, which in fact I think I will add. We'll come over here. I just want it on the top of everything. And we'll add glow. And then I'll just pull up on the amount. Just a touch here. I don't want a whole lot of that. And the glow filter, wow, that I didn't do this on the original, on the first one, but there's something about the glow filter that really just meshes everything together. And I think that that looks great. So let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are. And, you know, whatever your questions are regarding using sorry, my Stream Deck is just moving extremely slow today. trying to hit the button so I can change my view, but it doesn't want to work. It's like crawling for some reason. Anyway, let's go back here. All right, so yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on using this method. If you have done this, or if you would plan to do it, if you like these kind of videos. I mess around inside of ON1 with my content on a regular basis. Again, I'd recommend that if you are watching this and you have not already, go join the free community over on Freewill Photos, join the weekly challenge. This week, we are stopping motion. That's the challenge. It's completely free to do, and it's a fun way to share your work with others. Or even if you don't share the work, you can just type a post that says, hey, I did this and here's what I experienced. So, you can start that conversation. Now, if you have questions about ON1 Photo Raw or things that you can do inside of ON1 Photo Raw, shoot them to me in an email, which you'll find in the description box below. But it's just chris@freewellphotos.com, or you can come over to the website, fill out the contact form, send me a note there, say, hey, I would really like to know how to do, and then blah, blah, blah inside of ON1 Photo Raw, or any other photo editing app that I use here on the channel. I'll be more than happy to help you out with that. So I'm going to jump over to the comments now, and we got Mark in the comments. My man been hanging out with me for the whole stream, so thank you for that. And yeah, he says very impressive change, but I think I'll need to watch this video a dozen times to get all the pieces you've shown. Yeah, look, ON1 is one of those editing applications that I could spend hours, and in fact, I think what I showed you in 30 minutes or 40 minutes, however long the stream has been, or however long it took me to do all of the work, it was actually about an hour and a half to 2 hour process of me getting to the final image. And in fact, let's go ahead and compare. Can I get that image up? I want to compare the overall final image from the stream tonight, because last week when I did the composite of, and I'll just pull this over like so. Sorry, I'm getting this set up so I can do a side-by-side comparison. All right, and let's jump back to the screen for just a second. Maybe. Oh, technical difficulties. All right. There. We'll go there. And give me 1 second. I'm going to bring back the screen. All right, there we go. And just making sure that you guys are seeing the same thing. Yes, you are. All right. So obviously, the one on the left is what we made today. The one on the right is the one that I did the last time. And, see, I remember these were more green in the original edit. And I want to find out why. I wish I had not the notes, because I wasn't writing any of this down. I was just experimenting, but I wish I had all of the filters and the masks and everything so we could really unpack this one. I just tried to remake it, and I like that these are more green, but I kind of like the glow here more, but you can see that this is brighter, like a lot brighter. And maybe that's because I contrasted the sky a little too much. I don't know. Overall, you can see that I had a different edit on the right side, but overall they're pretty much the same thing, give or take a few notes there or differences. But hopefully, the goal here wasn't to make the exact same image. It was really just to teach you how you can filter through or rifle through a lot of these the tools that are inside of ON1, so you can make a composite essentially. Which I don't know if this counts as a composite minus the sky, but we'll call it that, and we'll go from there. Yeah, Mark said he likes the original greens better as well. Yeah, I personally like the original greens better as well too. And again, I have to figure out why. I don't know how I got to that because, like I said, this was about an hour and a half to 2 hours of me sitting around just playing with stuff in ON1. In fact, I forgot I blurred the sky in the original one, and I didn't blur the sky over here. So lots of nuances and differences, but ultimately we got a very similar edit. The only change I think I would make is to dehaze the distant mountains a little. Okay, yeah, I could see that. I was going, if you're talking about the mountain on the far right here, I didn't necessarily want to call too much attention back to those mountains because I really enjoyed having, like, if you look at this, the original image or the first image, the image I did originally, I don't know how to say that. Anyway, the one that I didn't do tonight, the background here, the sun would have made that hazy. And that's more believable, at least in my opinion. Whereas this one is also pretty believable. Like you could look at it and say like, okay, that's been heavily edited. But I don't think you would think like there's no way that the sky couldn't have, like, the sky and everything else looks like it would have been together. In the same context over here, you would look at this and say, wow, that's definitely been edited, but I don't think that it was I don't know what to say, but I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, ON1 is definitely a phenomenal piece of software, which is why I spend so much time in it. Like I said, I sit there for hours messing around, making stuff, things that I share on the channel, and some things that I just make for my own personal enjoyment. And they're not always that good. So that's the reason why you don't see everything that I do. But I can assure you, I sit and I ponder how can I make something inside of ON1 at least 4 days out of the week. And some of it turns into content. Some of it is answering questions that you guys have. And a lot of it is really just sandbox experimental type things that it depends on what I'm trying to do, if it actually works out or not. I would say 7 times out of 10, it works out. There's 3 times out of 10 that it probably doesn't. But all is well. All is well. All right. Let's see what we got in the chat. And Mark says he likes both of them. Not sure I could choose, and both are believable. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. In the world of photo manipulation, sometimes it's hard to come up with, does this work? Does that work? And, if someone says like, yeah, that does work, I really do appreciate it. And hopefully through all of the nuances and the rambling that I just made, hopefully you are able to identify a way to do the exact same thing that I just did, because with your images, or follow along with the other one and go from there. But I'm going to leave it there. If you guys got questions, like always, drop them in the comments section. And until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.